Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine Sundays. My name is Jamie Rich, and I am really glad that you're with us this Sunday as we gather each week to have a conversation around a topic. This week, our conversation topic happens to be learning to trust your own power. And in addition to us discussing this with our assembled people in our roundtable today, you always have a standing invitation to join in the conversation. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can interact with us in the chat there on YouTube. And if you're feeling like you'd like to actually enter the dialogue and be with us in the room, you now have that opportunity to do that. You can go to rsslive.org and join us and be part of the conversation. As I said this morning, this particular topic grew out of a conversation that we were having last week. And as it is with many things that we do on Rise and Shine Sundays, there are insights that surface in the room as part of our conversation. We're doing this unscripted. We're doing this with people who are, no one in this particular discussion, including myself, is an expert in this field, but we're all using our lived experience to frame a conversation about a topic. And last week, we were recognizing that there was this force that lives inside us that somewhere along the road in our life's journey gets kind of conditioned out of listening to. And there's that voice inside you that's kind of always known. And unfortunately, most of us have spent a large portion of our lives being talked out of trusting it. And it has to do with our own personal power. We are really surprised, I think, to find out how often we give our personal power away in ways that we're not even aware of. And so, if you're wanting to be part of this conversation and have some thoughts that you want to share, come join us because we've got some wonderful people here in the room that are going to be joining us for the conversation. And to do that, welcome to my assembled guests. Good morning to you, Sang.
Good morning. How is everybody?
We're good. We're feeling personally powerful, I think. How about you,
Yeah.
Jyoti? How are you feeling?
Very well. Good morning, Sang. Good morning, Jamie. Good morning, Ray. And good morning, good afternoon, good night, good evening for everyone in the world. And feeling great. Today is a good day to die or live and have fun.
We'll just claim and accept that one, shall we? Ray, do you have anything to offer after that?
Well, wow, what do you do to follow up on that? I just hello, welcome, and Jamie, you mentioned that it's the beginning of summer for you guys, and we're a little bit behind, but so we're enjoying the natural evolution of the seasons.
Right. Well, as we begin often as we do on Rise and Shine Sundays, we want to talk with a little bit of definition about what personal power really is. I mean, it's not like we're going to be talking about superpower, although sometimes reclaiming your personal power can feel like reclaiming superpower. But what what we find often is it's about the version of yourself that's underneath all of the different definitions of how you've been defined as you've been going along. So, Sang, would you help kind of frame a little bit of our discussion when we're talking about personal power? What does that really mean?
Well, I'm going to tell you my personal experience as always. And as always, there's a story. So I chose a few years ago, probably like the end of 2021, to walk in integrity with myself. And what that was being honest with myself because I thought I needed to trust other people to be myself. What I learned after about a year and a half of walking in integrity was I had to trust myself in that walk before I could trust other people. It's kind of like put your oxygen mask on first and then put it on to others. Same thing with trust, but we're not taught to trust ourselves because I've always been told what to do, how to do it, who to do it by, like everything like that. So trusting my own decisions became very, very challenging. And I can say probably in the last like 6 or 8 months, have I been fully, what can I say, feeling more comfortable and trusting my own decisions for myself. rather than caring for others. And I will say there's a lot of things to navigate there.
There is.
From
There is, and especially, and I want to make sure that I know there's some people watching us live on YouTube right now, and I want to make sure that, as you can see in this particular space, there are 3 slots filled by cisgendered men. But one of the things that I think when we're talking about reclaiming our personal power, especially as it relates to women, that oftentimes there is this version of reclaiming your power that some people will say, well, she's kind of a bitch.
right,
There's all of these horrible things that we do, especially to women, when they're wanting to sort of reclaim their own power.
Mhm.
Anything more? I mean, I threw the B word out early because I think it's really important, because not only are we told not to trust our power, we give it a
Right,
bad name. We give it a
right.
bad name.
Well, and I can say, growing up in the environment that I grew up in, right, with an Asian father, full 100% Asian father, the culture is a little different, right, than what we are in the US. And so it's kind of like, what can I say? Where it was men were dominant, right? So then me going into a workplace, not only, I'm just throwing this out here, am I a little Asian girl from little old town of Texas? I had a country accent, and I'm sure people can hear it sometimes when it comes out, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And that's also very confusing, right? And I play basketball, and I'm in pageants, and I do all these things, and they're like, "Who are you?" And to be able to be in a space with men, right, when you are assertive or you act like a man, you're then a bitch,
Mm-hmm.
right? When we're just trying to have steak at the table, right? Or even, and then when I go a little bit further, if we go back and say, I mean, we've only been able to have checking accounts for 50 years. Let's be serious. How many years have men been able to have checking accounts, right? So lots of different things that we're still learning as a whole, to where can we also, I invite the men to look at what women have endured to get where they are, to fight for the seat at the table when everyone thinks we're a bitch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Jaloki, can you help us then with a frame about human personal power? We do sometimes get so caught up in masculine and feminine, and what is power and who is power and what does all that look like? Is there something that's kind of that you care to respond to in this morning's conversation so far?
Thank you for the invite, Jamie. And I really like the way we entered this conversation and your exchange just now with Stang. Um, um, Reason I say I like it is, when I became aware of the subject today, I told myself, whoa, 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 we're gonna need like 15 session. First, what is, what are we talking about when the word power? There's so many definitions, and then personal power. Okay, what is it? How do I know that I have some power, personal? How do I connect with it? Okay, when I connect with it, how do I interact with it, and then how can I trust it? So
Mhm.
one of the and yeah, as usual, I may be coming to this from a tangent, but one of the reason I believe um, uh, talking about women and other quote unquote minorities, it's interesting that women, are treated like a minority. There are more women than men in the world. But other minorities, I'm Haitian. If I'm in the US, I'm seen as a black man.
Mhm.
So it's all, we have similar experiences, not the same, but with women, you know, in terms of power in society. I think one of the reason when somebody who is not a cisgender, white, privileged Christian man, capitalist, etc., is expressing some power, then there's a how do you say, not flashback, a response, a negative response. one of the reasons, not the only one, is that I think in the culture, especially in the modern Western global North culture, power is seen as the external in extrinsic. So I use both terms, external as it's happening outside, and extrinsic, it comes from outside.
Right.
The power over, the
Yeah.
power to
Yep.
to control something else, someone else than myself.
Beautifully
Okay.
put. Because you're talking about the difference between dominion, right? This whole
Yes,
idea that, oh, okay, my personal power, if I believe it to be my ability to magically control and manipulate others, that's not personal power. That's just
exactly.
some sense of artifice, right?
Exactly. And for me, my personal power first is intrinsic, which means it comes from inside. It's not from my position or my money or my weapon or my politics or my religion, etc., or my accent or my language or my nation, or where I was born, which zip code, etc. It's from inside. Okay. So there are also those powers. I mean, they exist, but those are not my personal power. And so first it's intrinsic, it comes from inside, and it's internal, it's a power that I can first exert on myself, which is what Sang was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't want to monopolize,
No, no, no,
from
no,
the
no, no.
beginning,
Because
but
again, you wove it back together because what you've been is you gave us the frame of recognizing that power exists and expresses on one level, but what we're really talking about is that sense of self. That when Sang went on her integrity walks with herself, she discovers her own power. It's not about somehow like it's this thing that fits. It's this way in which you express. It's that recognizing that sort of stove light, if I can use like an old gas stove. What is that fire in your particular belly, right? Where is that power? How is it stoked? How is it used? Ray, is that what they do in Canada? Is
Well,
that how
gee, I
power?
don't know. um, yeah, so many interesting elements that have been introduced into the conversation. I've had the benefit of working with very strong women. Matter of fact, to the point when I was younger and introduced to most of my senior people I were working with were women. So I started to look like, well, that's the way it is, isn't it? And then the minute you're exposed to the opposite. So I've had the benefit of seeing, oh, what is it like when we treat everybody with respect and we respect the power, and it's really the sharing of power, which is kind of opposite of the way power is generally done. Is the old expression, power is taken, it's not given. Well, that's a really bad start. Is it means you got to grab it from somebody else. So looping back to what Yoloki and Sang said, that internal, we have power, even though the systems around us have a tendency to say, no, you can't exert that power. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the minute we start to have people express who they are, how they think, that is really a great learning opportunity and a demonstration of internal power. But as you shared, saying, wow, is it not easy when the environment is essentially against that? And what you said, Yoloki, is that the basically there's almost a checklist. If you're female, this is what's expected of you. If you're not white, this is what is expected of you. But if we start to look at what's emerging now, there's at least the ability to question that
Right.
and to move towards something else. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think we, like Loki said, wow, okay, here's the next 10 sessions.
Well, and before we go, I'll come right back to you saying I want to invite people, if you are, express take a minute to express your power a little bit in the chat. If there's something in which you feel like, what that journey was for you to find out what your own personal power is, because what we're beginning to sort of already tap into is this idea that our personal power exists without you saying a word. It is sort of the countenance that you carry yourself with, the way in which, as you well know, there are very powerful people who say very, very little. And it's that recognition of when that light went on for you. So if you are, please feel free to just put a comment about power if you'd like to, as we incorporate it. But I know, Sang, there's probably been some things that have been discussed that you have some responses to. So please.
Well, I want to tap into, as we typically go into definitions for sure, right? Because we begin with talking about trust, and we've shifted to power, and how do those go together, right? Because trust is like a core belief that people have, right? It's a definition that's pretty much a core definition, right? But power is interpretive in terms of, in what facet is it in? Is it government power? Is it psychological power? Is it an outlet of power? Like, there's so many different interpretations. So for me, trust is the willingness, right, to be vulnerable because of something that I believe, something that I know will not intentionally harm people. I'm not using my trust to deceive or fail people. And it's more of that, what is that core belief? And then in terms of power, if we go back to what we were talking about last week about the art of war, your power is in knowing who you are, right? Knowing, like you talked about before. I will say this: there were times I grew up to be silent, so I would have this aura about me when I would walk into a room. I wouldn't speak to anybody. So I love that you said that, Jamie. Wouldn't speak to anybody, wouldn't say anything, but everyone was like, "Who is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is she doing?
Mm-hmm.
Who is she?" And then I would talk to a few people and I would leave.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it made it this big mystery. But at the time, I was only doing what I knew what to do. I didn't recognize it as a power that everyone else recognized it in me, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm walking in these rooms just doing my thing, being me. And so as I got older, people were like saying, but you have this energy and this power when you walk in the room. And I'm like, do I? And then I had to start, because I'm like naive. And then I start recognizing it when I walk in. But then it's, how do I then use that power?
Yep.
Right? And I continued to be the person that came in, did whatever, because it was who I was.
Right. It is so great. I want to make sure that we go back to we do incorporate in this week's discussion two really interesting words: trust and power. And in between the words, learning to trust your own power is, of course, you, right? So if you haven't even learned to trust yourself and you're still trying to discover what your own power is, that makes this walk that you're doing, just like you're starting to say, this is a journey, right? This is very much something that you have to sort of experience when you're with other people. So, and as you know, and gentlemen, please feel free, anyone else, learning to trust yourself first, right? Of recognizing that when you walk into spaces, oftentimes things are being projected onto you, and people that make assumptions about who you are. Oh, well, there's a trusty person, or oh gosh, that guy looks really powerful, or that person, that lady, she looks like, oh, I could, she's not important. All of these things factor into the mix, right? And so it's the walk that we make, right, while we're learning to trust our own power, that is independent of all the things that are being projected on us. Fair?
Yes.
Yeah.
Go.
So much inspiration. So much inspiration. So my last name, I'm Haitian. My ancestry has slavery in it, and so I have African slaves as ancestors, and I have European slave owners as ancestors. And so my last name is French. My last name is Desable, which means of the sands in English. So all my life, since I've been, kind of able to think, I'm asking myself, okay, what does that mean? Of the sands, of the sands. And I've been thinking a lot about that. And when I was thinking about power, because it has come to my mind too, okay, what's the power of a grain of sand? And a grain of sand has a lot of power without having to do anything. And you make glass with sand. Or when you have a grain of sand in your eye, I mean, you understand the power.
Sure.
Or you go to a beach. And there's the power of the grain of sand, but there's the power of a few billion and billions of grain of sand together, and wow. So this to go to connect with what has been said, and also I'm going to contradict myself a little bit,
Go right ahead.
intentionally.
You're in a safe space. You're in a safe space. Go right for it.
You know, we've been talking about personal power. It's internal. For me, the first source of power, if I use the definition power as source of energy, okay, the first source of power is life.
Mhm.
Whatever power I can have is because I'm alive. But the source of life, it's not from me. I mean, it was here before I existed in this form, and it will exist after after me. So actually, my internal power comes not exactly from inside of me. Now, it manifests itself in me and through me. And I can now decide to which degree I trust it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now, from my shamanic perspective, like, to trust it, I have to know that it's strong.
Mhm.
And for my life power to be strong, I have to be in balance. I have to be in equilibrium. I have to be in sync. I have to be healthy
Mm-hmm.
at all level of life. And there are ways to do that. And of course, we're all human. None of us is completely in balance, is completely healthy. So it's understand, okay, where am I lacking power?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Where am I having power? Okay. How can I,
No,
like
I
you
was just
said,
going to say, because what you put, I mean, again, this is one of the things I love about having these type of conversations. The last 45 seconds of what you said could be a 12-week workshop.
yeah,
Right? Because it's recognizing that where is our power coming from, right? You know, that ability, and then to connect with that, then to connect with how that engages in the world, but to also recognize that it's the soil, the environment of where we care for our power, right, that allows us to develop the right use of our power. We
yes,
trust our power when we're able to cultivate it. And oftentimes, as I'm sure, you know, Sang reminded us at the very top of the hour, as I'm sure people are watching as well, you know, a lot of people's power and expression is habituated out of them. Do you know what I mean? That there is an oppression to all of that as well. So, you know, being able to create the correct soil for you to learn how to express your own personal power, you know, that's what's so rich. And we also have to recognize that we've been conditioned, and sometimes in that soil is a lot of rocks, a
yeah,
lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
a lot of
Mhm.
grains of sand in our eye.
yeah.
I see the big satisfied smile on Saying. Was there more you wanted to say, Jaloki?
If I may,
Yeah, please.
yeah, if I may, just to I believe, from my perspective, there's almost a direct correlation between someone being disconnected with their personal power and having the need to use external power. The
Mhm.
more people feel that they need to be in a position of authority, feel that they need to use their money, feel that they need to use weapons, okay, the more, for me, I see that they're disconnected from their damage. They're damaged. And that's another conversation. From that perspective, I don't blame them. In a sense, it's not their fault, but there's something to be done because it's harming themselves and the rest of us.
Mhm.
We'll just take a little breathing pause here to recognize the power of what you were saying as we continue to use that word. Who's up?
I want to add one element that both of you or all of you so far is if we reimagine what
Mhm.
power is. Yoloki brought up its energy, and then it's how is the energy shared or applied.
Mhm.
So if we look at and your last statement, Yoloki and saying is okay. So if power is over others instead of power with others,
Mhm.
And I think that's the shift or the conversation, is that, are we being controlled by others that wish to have power over us, versus what we're doing today is power with. So listening and responding in a way that shifts the dynamic. So power with, I think, is a way to start to have these deeper conversations.
I'm just going to sit here breathing. So feel free to just, because there's been a lot that's been discussed. Go.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump in and say, if we go back to one, I appreciate Jaloki talking about the grain of sand, because the first thing I think about is, how can I make this relatable so that people understand the value of a grain of sand, or how powerful it can be, right? If you were to get a grain of sand in your eye, you would be in a little bit of pain. That grain of sand can do a lot of damage, right? So if we think about what that little grain of sand can do, right? And then we pull in some science that I never thought I was going to be talking about at this age, right? Where Albert Einstein said energy, mass and energy are fundamentally the same, just in different forms. So if we look at ourselves as, we are mass and we are energy, we are powerful. But it's what we decide to do with that. Like, a grain of sand can not decide, I'm going to go pop in Jamie's eye today.
Right.
Right? It happens to come into my eye, and now it becomes a powerful piece of sand in my eye.
Yeah.
So when the power, it's, what is it made of? What is my power made of? What can my power become? Are we using it manipulatively? Are we using it trustingly? What does my power as a collective? If I keep showing up in the room every time as myself, and I'm not coming into the room to be manipulative, to work the room and get all the benefits and things like that, how am I using my power?
Yeah.
However, the interpretation of what someone may see could change what they see my power as, if that
Right.
makes sense.
It is. And what you so beautifully demonstrated is the difference between power and force. Even though power is a force, right? It is. And again, what you were discussing was this recognition that when you respect the power, when you respect the source, and when you use that power with that respect and with that awareness of where it comes from, it shifts it, right? Because you're aware of how that energy will. Okay, how do I want to be in the room? How do I want to show up? I mean, yes. And what Jaloki so, eloquently said, we are right now in an environment where the wrong use of power, the most harmful use of power, continues to oppress us on very subtle levels. I mean, no, people aren't necessarily living in a battleground of war all the time, but the oppressive use of power is evident everywhere. And it's the thing that is impacting people so powerfully right now, is that idea. And they feel powerless in these situations because of the way in which that force is so strong. And what all of you have been speaking to is this recognition of, yes, there is this internal force of power that we have, and it's our choice to uh, find the right environment for that to express in. Is that sort of where I know a lot of you work with clients, a lot of you work with other people in terms of understanding. I see you nodding. So is that a common thing that people are just disconnected from?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Ah, okay.
Well, then
Just,
fix
just,
it. Just fix it. Just tell us what the fix is, and we'll be
of
fine.
course. That's it. Yes. First, in the modern paradigm, I think there's a dissonance, cognitive dissonance. Okay, the narrative is matter is all there is, and even though, as Sang said, we've known for about a century for a few people, but for millennia for many people, that matter is not material. Hello. Um, uh, uh, so Matter is all that there is. So I am only my body. And because scientists cannot prove otherwise, this is what we have to take as truth. Everybody knows it's not the truth. I know that there's something more in my body than just my body. But because I am conditioned to believe that, I think belief is a part of the conversation here. Because to believe that, then my body's frail. Whatever. There was always someone who is stronger than me, who has more powerful bodily than me, than myself. So I feel powerless, of course, and it's almost considered normal. It's expected. Okay, so I have to, as Ray was saying, to go and grab power from someone else, because apparently there's a scarcity of power in the universe, and so the one that I don't have, I have to take it from someone else. And that's the world we're living in, and that's what's considered normal, and that's what's killing us.
I wrote down something as you were talking, which is power does not equal your ability to overcome force.
No.
And so, but that's often what people are doing these days when they talk about, well, I've got to be stronger than, I've got to somehow overcome, and that's a terrible thing to throw on ourselves, right? And so no wonder we become disempowered in situations, because we're not even using the definition of power, which sustains us best.
I think one of the hexagram of the I Ching, Chinese 64, is the power of the weak, or something like that. As Sang was saying, vulnerability. I think women are teaching us more and more how there's more power in vulnerability than actually in apparent unvulnerability.
To think that the president of the United States that currently is most undone by people laughing at him says quite a bit, right? So, but back on the subject, anyone, please feel free.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, I invite everybody when they go to dinner tonight to ask their friends, what does E equals MC squared mean to them? Like, we know this to be a thing, but what does it mean, right? Do we remember what it was in science class? Do we realize how much it affects what we do in our daily lives? Do we actually other than we just know it, right? It's like everyone, like, for example, and I don't read the Bible as much, but I always see John 3:14. Have no idea what it is, right? But it's embedded in my head because I've seen it everywhere, right? But I have no idea what it means. So anybody, I promise you, could probably say E equals MC squared, and they can tell you it was Albert Einstein. But what does it mean? That's going to be the dinner conversation. For me, I know it will be.
So here in the United States, where we're celebrating Memorial Day weekend, Sang D is inviting you to impress your friends with the idea of coming up with an Einstein quote while someone's munching a hot dog. And meaning, though, but the intent behind the question is to what? To elicit a...
Well, to understand, I feel like, what is energy, right? What is energy? How does energy have the power to do what it does, right? If we think about everything, like what Jaloki's talking about, everything around us is energy. Everything around us is a mass. It all has the ability to do something of some power, depending on what we, probably the external humans, do with it. But everything has its own entity. And like a tiny amount of matter, like we talked about, the grain of sand, can produce something very extraordinary that now we have to understand how that works. And I think understanding ourselves and did I ever think that I would say I have this energy and aura about me? Like, I figured that out over the years, because people would come up with this story about everywhere I go, I meet people and I stay connected with these people. I have people who I was on a dating app with, never met them before in my life, but there's this energy that we enjoy and we still check in with each other. Again, never met these people a day in my life.
Yeah. Well, and again, what you're talking about is oftentimes we think that examples of our own personal power are in the big moments of our lives. But
Correct.
the true expression of our personal power comes in how we conduct ourselves on an everyday basis, right? So even though,
Mhm.
I know that if I'm at a Memorial Day gathering this weekend, I may ask somebody about, well, how are you expressing your own personal power, but it's recognizing that power, that choice, that energy exists in the everyday, right? In the
Yeah.
way in which you carry yourself. Ray, I know you had some time to digest what was going on. Was there something that you wanted to add into the
But
conversation?
I was listening to all three of you and remembering different episodes of movies and stories, which I just love that saying always talks about a story or gives an example in life, and I think the narratives are so important because the wrong narratives reinforce wrong wrong understanding or bad understanding. And I'll just reference a couple that just for fun is yesterday in a call, Jamie said joy is resistance. So in today's context, is be exerting one's power in such a small way is an act of defiance and an act of immense power. So
Mhm.
and then the other thing, wacko connection as well, is in the movie Spartacus. At the very end, the Romans have triumphed over the rebellion. But what happens when they say, "You will give us Spartacus"? They don't know who he is. They've never seen him. And then one by one, they all get up saying, "I am Spartacus. I am Spartacus." So the act of defiance of basically saying, "We're not going to tell you,"
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
and they and this frustrates and it humiliates the most powerful force in the world at that time.
Right. H,
So it's
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say basically. So basically, power in its internal power has immense power, even though it doesn't appear that way. And you made a great reference is that um, the other example that came to mind when you said, okay, those who have the most amount of power also fear anyone actually saying no
Right.
on the smallest form.
What you're talking about is I'm going to horribly butcher a quote, and I'm
That's
sure
all right.
someone in the chat will remind me of the original source of this. But there was a movement when people would say, "Wave your spoons, wave your spoons." The "I am Spartacus" moment, the recognition that just like Jaloki was saying to you earlier, I am a grain of sand, but it's not. It's through my understanding of my spoon, my contribution to emptying the ocean, right? I can't empty the ocean all by myself. I can't have the impact. But when I understand my own power and I understand that I am a spoon, right? And so when you wave your spoons for others to see, right? It's the idea that you're encouraging people to use their own personal power to be able to contribute in situations. So they don't have to be somehow doing anything else but claiming their role and however their personal power expresses, right? And all of us have that sort of different, even though we may have individual grains of sand, our how that grain of sand is actually applied, is really potent. And so, Sang's question that she would like for you to take to the Memorial Day party this weekend is really to open up that discussion about what is your personal power. And it goes
Mhm.
back a lot to what Jaloki was saying, which is female power of expressing vulnerability. Sometimes vulnerability can open up a discussion that allows so much transformational energy to incur because you created the right conditions for someone to find their own power, to root, to belong, to express. And again, so much of our discussion is about power, is about the force, the impact, all of it up here, as if that's really what matters, right?
Mhm.
A lot in the room today, isn't there, Jaloki?
Yes, yes, yes. Something that is coalescing for me between Sang's question. I'm going to say something about it. I'm not going to give any answer. I'm going to say something about it. Um, um, the let me say, a lot of what we're talking about today, for me, feels counterintuitive.
Mhm.
Okay, that matter is actually energy. Oh, okay. What does that mean? That people who are usually considered socially powerful are possibly people who feel powerless. Okay, that vulnerability hold power. It's all counterintuitive. So personally, what I thrive to do, I'm not saying that I am succeeding every time. What I've tried to do is, when there's a situation and I tend to respond. Okay, if I have the wisdom to think about it, take a pause and okay, what's counterintuitive here?
Mhm.
Okay, because probably the counterintuitive is the wiser, because right now the energy of society wants me to go to the intuitive, which I have been conditioned with, and it will lead me further in being controlled by someone who is actually keeping my power oppressed and inviting me to give my power away to them. And so the counterintuitive, which will feel scary, which will feel uh, 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 painful, which will feel like wow, this is crazy, will actually lead me to claim back my power often.
Again, I'm just going to breathe at your own time. Comments welcomed. Beautifully expressed.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm gonna say that what I'm hearing too is, as someone who was silent growing up, didn't have a voice, then chose to be vulnerable and share, I didn't have that choice. So trusting that I have a choice, and then trusting the environment in which I share my vulnerabilities is something where, again, how it all comes together in this big huge map, right? Of how I had to trust myself around others, or whatever I was, as the read the room kind of thing. Trust who's there to be able to share what I felt like I could share in a vulnerable space, and but not realizing that I had that choice. And because we come from a place when people are powerless, they don't have choices. They feel like they don't have choices, which makes it then internally super hard and challenging to dive deep inside. When I decided to walk on integrity myself, I can't tell you the amount of people around me that didn't understand what that meant. But it was a theme, like, people who have been walking with me since 2021 and before, I'm like, I made a choice. I made a huge choice to do something because I wanted to walk in integrity with myself, and it changed a lot of things in terms of how I decided to make decisions. And that commitment to self, and that I get to choose how I share this information, is something of a big power, for sure.
Mm.
I sit around men. I love talking with men because I've had more, and there's something about it. I've had more men clients in the last 3 years than I've had my entire career. And when I tell you I want the space for men to have, where they get to have a conversation, you're not right or wrong about what you feel. You get to have a conversation with someone who can provide you that soft nurturing, but I'm not trying to smother you with it. It's, you get to be here and you get to share, because just because women have been, things have gone on there, people of color, things have gone on there. I mean, I'm raising 2 interracial children in the world, so there's lots of things going there. But also, being that person that men have also gone through things that they have not been able to share. And so now to me, it's about trust in men, but having them trust me that you can share with me and I'm not going to hurt you in the way women have done as well. So there is the flip side of that, and I want to be
Well,
sure to
yeah,
talk
and
about
one
that.
of the reasons why someone like you who is strong in their own personal power and understanding where that comes from source, why that creates a safe space for men is that,
Mhm.
remember when I was saying at the top of the show that so often we tend to give our power away. And if you
Mhm.
are a man who believes that your power only comes from being attached to a source, the oppressive source, right? I am connected to a higher power. Like most men tend to give away their power in the forms of allegiance, in following, in being good soldiers, and all of the things in which men are, they subjugate themselves to this and respect and pay order to a, a sort of, force outside themselves, which they've never really questioned that authority, right? And yes, we could do a whole entire, maybe one day we will, on on that particular walk. That is what. Okay, well, don't question at all. Just this is the dominant power. You need to be a part of it, right? And when someone creates a space for the right use of power to be expressed, it is
Mhm.
often through quiet vulnerability. It is also through an ability to say, well, you know, uh, you've never had the chance to trust yourself because you've been trusting someone outside yourself with your
Yeah.
power. And
Mhm.
and for men, that's very, very hard to let go of because
Yes.
they're conditioned to trust the dominant power, and because the dominant power rewards them in a way, there's this feedback loop, and really strong women invite them to consider perhaps the uh, trusting your own power resides somewhere different, right? And
Mhm.
and it's not about making you bad or wrong or whatever. You are conditioned to believe that, you know, that allegiance, that subjugating yourself to a dominant alpha, whatever we want to call that energy, right, was your role. Maybe not so much, right? Um,
Mhm.
this is these three words: trust, power, and you in the center are really an interesting walk that people have to make. And what we certainly are finding out from this discussion is how much of that walk gets messed up, and how what we can do is as best for others is to um, lead by our example, right? Allow people to come to us because they kind of want that quiet power that gets expressed. They want to be in that safe space. They want to receive that vulnerability. Is this Does this resonate with anyone?
Yes, 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 yes. And going back to the counterintuitive,
Hmm.
you know, patriarchy, I believe, comes from the almost, what's the word, innate, almost um, um, programmed in sheer fear that men have of women. Men feel that women have this power of giving life, among others, that we don't understand, and it affects us. It attracts us in a way that we can't control. And so, no. I have to subjugate them. I have to crush that power. I have to be on top of them. Pun non intended. And so patriarchy. Okay, and now you have the manosphere. I mean, that's another. I mean, it's the same discussion.
Yeah.
And so here again, maybe we don't have time enough. Maybe the message for man, so including to myself and others, is don't fear women's power. Trust yours, but not the power that allow you to be on top. The power with, like Ray was saying. Imagine those two atomic bomb. Male and female, not beyond men and women. Male and female, the feminine and the masculine. What that creates in the universe.
Right.
I mean, woohoo!
Yeah, and what you're also talking about, Jaloki, is there's an aha moment. There's the understanding of all that. There's the intellectualizations. Oh, yes, but the truth of trust. Trust requires experience in the walk. It goes back to, saying taking those integrity walks. It isn't, trust is not instant. It's like, I can't instantly trust, right? I can trust through that experience, that walk, that journey. Yes, we're getting closing on our hours, so I want to make sure what's leaping out, Sang.
Well, it literally reminded me of something yesterday. Yesterday I was a part of Jessica, who owns the Breakthrough Show Network, also hosts Soul Session Saturdays, right? Soul Session Coffees. And yesterday's topic, we talked about the question of the day was, what do I tend to do when things are going well, and how can I stay steady instead of fixing? And one of the things that came out of that, and just it made me think of this, is how can we experience something if we haven't been through it, right? And the biggest quote yesterday, and it was so funny because Jessica said something, I saw you run to your computer. And I did. I ran. I grabbed my computer. I was like, I got to type this up. And it was, how can we heal without sickness? That was the quote.
Woohoo!
And let me tell you, I was like, yo. Because how can we talk about how to go through a journey that we've not been through? Right? I tell you everyone all the time, I have more stories than Reader's Digest. Okay. I've been a fly on the wall in many rooms, right? So when I tell you I've seen it, I've experienced it, I've heard it, I've witnessed it, I've done it, like it's there. And so when you think about, we think about what we're going to do with the oxygen mask, right? It's like, oh, I think I'm going to give it to my kid first, right? Because we're taught to think of others in that aspect. But really, how can we heal without sickness? And I think that was super huge yesterday. And it comes into this. How can we trust when we've not been in positions to trust ourselves?
Right. And so the way in which we do that is in creating experiences for ourselves and those we are closest to, for them to experience their own power in a trusting, safe, supportive environment. We create that garden on our walk. We take the integrity walk that Sang did. We take the awareness that Jaloki has been pointing out to us. And when we embody that creates the opportunities for others to experience what it's like to trust. Ray, was there something that you wanted to?
Well, just to add to what you guys are saying is essentially trust has to be earned, but it also has to be learned.
Ooh,
because what you said, saying is like, yes, there again, it's counterintuitive, as well as the yin and the yang of there's no healing without disease or trauma. So, but it's when we separate things that we create our own issues. Is
Right.
that, yes, like the healing is the lesson, is the experience, is the understanding that comes from something.
Right.
So there's always a trigger moment. So the universe usually offers us something.
Right.
Oh, Ray, you made my spine tingle with that one. He said it's earned and learned.
Well, yeah, because everything you shared, that's what I'm hearing and feeling from what you're doing is you've learned it and you've earned it, and others have to earn.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you
earn the trust. Yeah.
And maybe one way, again, there are others, one way to learn it. So I'm going to bring something more that is counterintuitive, or maybe a paradox. The relation between the true and the false, the authenticity and the fake. in a recovery circle, you learn the behavior of healing and recovering, but it's difficult. You have to believe it, but you don't believe it yet, and so they tell you you fake it until you make it. So I think it applies to trust your own personal power. You fake it until you make it. So you breathe as if, how would I be breathing if I trusted my personal power right now? I know I don't. I'm not trusting it, okay? But how would my breath would be? How would my body would be? How would I look to the world? Okay, I'm gonna fake that. And you know what? When you fake it, you start feeling a power emerging from inside. I've done it.
Yeah. And theater kids everywhere will recognize that fake it till you make it is really just act your part, act it out, try on the costume and see. So much of what we want to be able to do on Rise and Shine Sundays each week is to create a conversation around a topic where, again, none of us are experts in the particular field that the question that we're bringing up. But it is by developing this ability to have a conversation and all these wonderful things emerge. And this is something that you can replicate in your own backyard. We invite you to come back here every Sunday and have the conversation with us, to watch. But it's also something that we want you to participate in. And it's also something that we'd like to, for you to consider bringing more of these type of conversations into your own world, where you are creating spaces around questions, right? We recognize that there are all sorts of things that mean to be addressed. And we don't necessarily need to say, well, I have, just like we were talking about yesterday, saying, well, here's the solution. Here's the solution. Here's the solution. Let's not have a conversation about the solution yet. Let's have a conversation to find out what's alive in the question for other people. And so Rise and Shine Sundays exists each week for you all to participate in a live, unscripted discussion about this. Was there anything that, as we are talking about trusting your own personal power, you all have just said so many wonderful, everyone, we've had workshops, we have all sorts, we have mic drop moments. Was there anything else that someone would like to add before we wrap up our hour?
I'm just going to add that my only other question for you to ask people at dinner while you're eating your hot dogs is ask people if they know what their personal power or personal gifts are to the world. And see, because the ones who are able to answer you quickly, they trust themselves in that aspect, but you can also feel the energy of their authenticity when they speak that, and you'll feel it. It'll be different.
Anyone else?
Talking to you who are listening to us and watching us right now, you have an amazingly immense, huge power in yourself. When you forget this, get back to this. Remember, you are a powerful, extremely powerful being. Much respect to you.
Beautifully said.
Awesome.
Yeah, I want to make sure that everyone knows that there's a standing invitation to join us, but there's also a standing invitation for you to connect with the individual members of the Rise and Shine panel. And if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to us. We're very grateful that the Breakthrough Show Network on YouTube allows us to send our beacon of this discussion out across their network. So our thanks to Jessica Dugas and everyone connected with the Breakthrough Show Network. We will see you back here next week for Rise and Shine Sundays. Until then, you now have your instructions of what to do at your parties this weekend in the States, but just take it into what we're doing. So until then, continue waking up to what's emerging. And thanks for being here. Oh, and I ended it without the theme this week.